Hi, everyone. So today we've got a very exciting episode prepared because we've got Nicole Aderson here as our guest. And Nicole is a powerhouse, I don't know for the lack of a better word, when it comes to fintech, venture capital. She's got a wealth of experience as an entrepreneur and also in a corporate world. But on a more personal side, Nicole and I met at David Lloyd Gym many moons ago, where we found out both from South Africa, and we also shared our passion for running. We've done a lot of crazy races and runs together, and we stuck with each other. You stuck with me, Nicole, for better and worse. Over 14 years. And I'm just so excited to see, firstly, how both of us have evolved, how our journeys, we come together, we go apart, we come together, but somehow the universal forces always bring us together in one shape or the other. So I'm really excited to have you here today to talk about future work. And without further ado, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more and just tell us what future work means to you?
Thanks, Lena, and thanks, Sarit, for the invitation. Lovely to have three wonderful ladies speak about such an important topic. Lena did the honors. So I'm a blend, really, serial entrepreneur in the technology space, mostly in an area that is focused on what the future of finance looks like. And that's abbreviated typically to fintech. And because of that experience, I've had many rough and tumble experiences to bring to the fore. So it goes without saying that that's given me the opportunity to actually sit in the chair of an investor and actually look at companies, given the fact that I've been on many of these journeys myself, and be able to help companies in their own journey by deploying capital and providing resources and intellect and a lot of my life lessons. So that's what I do on a daily basis. The future of work for me, massively broad topic, but I think for me, I can drill it down into two main themes. One is, irrespective at a macro level, the world is moving from central to decentral or decentralized. And I think that is something that is a very interesting topic and sometimes a little bit of a scary topic for many. But I do think the future of work is far more decentralized in many ways, in the ways decisions are made, the way leadership evolves, the way creativity comes into the workplace. So that is a definite theme for me, and I see that happening anyway. And the second is the idea of the release of ego. I think businesses have been fueled by ego for as long as I've been in the workforce. And I actually think we've reached the tipping point where the tolerance levels and the appreciation of ego has to evolve. Ego will remain, but I think it's in a reflective state. Certainly the last 3 years since the world went pop has been an opportunity for many to actually rethink their purpose. And I think that's flowing into the workplace.
Nicole, so definitely from your background, you have an interesting point of view, and this is, I think, part of the reasons, in my opinion, you're amazing that we brought you into this conversation, because you've got the opportunity to sit and see a lot of companies. So your perspective is probably most wider than the average person. And even if you work in multiple company, you on a daily basis get to see more, and you get to see globally. So your perspective is highly appreciated. And you picked the topic of ego as representative for you. The evolution around the ego for organization is one of the next steps. And it's actually interesting because I didn't expect that. And the next question that we plan to ask you is success. How do you see organizations succeed in the future of work? So definitely if you see ego parts of it, and I represent organizations, so you need to explain to me what ego means to you, and then what do you think shifts we need to do around that as an organization to transcend that?
Okay. For me, ego means a persona, and that's either cultivated, learned, or in some ways kind of inherited. right? We're born into cultures, we're born into families. I don't want to use the word groomed, but, there is a bit of that going on, and that all contributes to this, the development of this persona. And believe you me, I've really fostered that in the early part of my career. It was expected. I felt it was expected for me to fit in, to look a particular way, to sound a particular way, to tick a number of boxes, to climb a ladder, whatever that ladder was, with a particular 45-degree, angle. And life just doesn't work like that, right? And what entrepreneurship does is it really breaks you down, because nothing is linear. Lena and I have had many a conversation about, wow, okay, it really does take, it certainly did. It took me about 2 years to unpick the patterns of my past on every level when I started my own business. And that making the decision wasn't hard, but actually sticking to the decision to be an entrepreneur was the most difficult thing, because I had to change everything. It also opens you up. So entrepreneurship means so many things, but one of the things is, your network. You have to be so networked. You have to be a funnel. You need to be a hunter-gatherer rather than, in target practice. You have very little infrastructure, right? You have very little resources. You have to be multiple things, wear multiple hats. And I think that makes you very humble, right? It really makes you appreciate perhaps the things you had in the past, the things that other people may have, but it also makes you tenacious. It makes you break through the barriers. It also makes you see through people, right? And if you're an entrepreneur, you have to be very good at actually understanding who your audience is, who you're selling to, what talent you bring on board. This is why I think the direction of travel for businesses have to be much more entrepreneurial. And with that means they have to think about these personas and actually really break them to get the best out of people.
I understand what you're saying. And, I'm an entrepreneur, and I did 20 years of that, and I grew my business to over 30 million. And I think that I'm not the one that you're talking about, because I became global, and you are talking about people that are one-person business, and I understand that. And that you have to be everything. And I had the benefit of working with a lot of amazing people that connected to the cause and helped me get my company to where it is today. But I do understand that. Do you think that organization can help people deal with that? There is any recommendation that from, an organization is a mechanism. It's a system, because the more you grow, it's not one. You have 200 people. You have VP HR, you got recruiters, you got marketing team, you got sales team, you got people. So what are your recommendations for organization to actually help people? Deal with their ego, I guess.
Well, no, I mean, I yes, yes, no. So you mentioned system. I think that, the design, I'm looking at Lena, the design of an organization is fundamentally needs to be shaken up. There are very few companies that are designed, to my second point, or my initial point, around being much more decentralized in decision-making. Very few organizations have actually made that step or can make that step in the short term. So I think leadership, therefore, has to supplement for that. So the design may be hierarchical for a business, but leadership style can go a long way to aiding the freedom of thought and the fostering of people to allow individuals to be themselves, is really what I'm trying to say. Unless we're ourselves, we can't be our best creative, our best creative force for good. And so that really does come down to leadership. And I think that's a big, big thing. Leadership and management are very, very different things. You can manage a system, right, with controls and gates, but often leadership is, you don't find those controls and gates, or you need to allow those gates to open. And that is scary for a lot of people in positions of power. So I think that is the big gulf that we have. And hopefully over time, the more leaders that are able to have an influence on organizations at every level, those organizations will naturally change in the way they're shaped and how they are designed for the future.
I've got a quick question. Okay, go for it. I've got a quick question also on that.
I just wanted to know because you probably meet a lot of people. I know what investors' work is, and basically it's meeting people every day, all the time. Yeah. Do you get to conversation with people that are aware of what you're talking about? Because that's part, I think, of the issue, the awareness for concepts like egos, creative thinking, because the old concept, this is exactly what we're doing, the channel is still sticking. So even if you're telling an organization you're not thinking creatively, they still hold the mental concept of what creative thinking is, which is no longer going to sustain in the near future work. So how many people are you actually meeting that are actually, have the new way of the new concept of creative thinking, leadership, and so on?
Yeah, it would be very hard for me to quantify, but I would say probably 6 out of 10. And that's quite high. And the reason I say that, Sarit, is because, again, I'm working with entrepreneurs, and these entrepreneurs generally are running big, successful companies, but they've had a very tough journey. I don't know an entrepreneur that hasn't got a story to tell. I'm deeply passionate about the human side of forming a business, okay? Because we all see highlight reels, but actually, if you really saw, okay, the stumbles and the falls, that's the real story. That's a human story. So most of I'd say 6 out of 10 of the founders I speak to and actually want to speak to have a level of recalibration of ego. They have a humility. It may not be perfect, but they have that. And I think that's really important because generally they are dealing with attracting talent that they may not have the money to attract top talent, right? They've got to sell something else to people to want to join. And so like meets like. Very often people are bought into an entrepreneur's vision, passion. There has to be that aspect very often. So that's, fortunately, I see that. Now, I'm also in a position where the money I place comes from companies, big corporates, right? So it's big corporates learning from entrepreneurs. And that's really a very interesting intersection. And I could go on for days about the trouble and the strife there. But both sides need one another in a way. Like, entrepreneurs need money and they need big customers to sell to. Big customers are intrigued by this energy. I don't know what to say. Like it's
magic.
Magic, exactly. And what I'm hoping to see, and this is the role I play, but I guess both of you do in a way, is to get that energy transfer, right, into, you call businesses, corporates, big businesses, systems. Actually, there should be communities, right? We spend 9 hours, 10 hours, in our cases, probably 16 hours, right? With this people, talent, individuals. They're not our blood, they're not our family, but we spend more time with them. They should be communities. That is the passion I have, is seeing that. Now I have a way in which I can help that, right, through the world I'm in, as do you.
I love that. I love the word community. Thank you for sharing that. It's an exciting concept.
I actually want to touch back on a ego part that you were talking about, because that's the topic very close to my heart. And the reason I want to actually drill into it a bit, because sometimes I speak to people on about ego, and they go, "I don't have ego. Like, I've got no ego. I'm humble. I want to help people." But by ego, we don't just mean being aggressive or not being humble enough or not being unhelpful. By ego, we also mean the thought process, right? The limiting beliefs, the stories we tell us about ourselves, like we can't achieve this, we can't have this, we've got to behave a certain way, we've got to act a certain way. I mean, all of that is ego. So I just wanted you to kind of, clarify when you were talking about the ego in companies or in organizations and also people, and how you feel it could be keeping us back from achieving success.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's not, we are born with ego. We are born with ego, and in its most, I guess, organic form, it's a way of protecting. It's a protection mechanism. But we've trained it, over the course of history to be, to kind of take us degree by degree as we go through our life journey, unless we check in, so far away from our kind of organic, native, original truth. And that's, yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm saying we all naturally dip into personas. We all naturally, and we are that by, mothers, wives, girlfriends, colleagues, running partners, whatever the case may be. We're many things. But when it becomes, when you feel that inner tension, when you feel like you're pretending, when you lose that authenticity or that ability to voice your truth, that's when it becomes a problem. And all too often in businesses, most people have done that so much that when you actually do try and prod and poke them for their truth, they don't actually have an answer, right? That's the problem. And in there, that means people, I believe, lose their ability to be the whole creative force comes from that original, authentic truth. And the worst thing, of course, and you ladies will see it more than me, is that leadership has been misinterpreted for managing people into boxes, right? And so we've forced that, and so we've sucked the soul out of businesses. And that has to change. And I see that as the future, one of the main drivers for the future of work.
So do you have any practical tips on, what individuals, because organization is a sum of its people, right? And you correctly pointed out, it's got to start from leadership. But what I also see is that, leaders or managers, rather, they want to manage other people. They want to focus on KPI targets, whatever, the forecast for the company. And maybe not enough attention goes on self. So do you have any suggestions what they can start doing in order to help their people also grow in a company grow?
I want to add something, because you're focusing on the personal and you would answer, Lena, but organization do have an ego. I will tell you, when in my personal experience, you start to understand that. We are an Israeli entity. Like every person, we go through personalization, meaning how do you operate in the Israeli market, what talent you can attract, how do you operate. We as an Israeli company most likely has less processes than a company that incorporated somewhere around Europe. When you became global, this is the first clash to a company ego when you meet other people. So when you talk about management or employees, they come with their personalization of how a company should organize, what forms even, how do you get people to work? And there is a different experience here in Israel. So a company do have an ego like a person. It goes through a personalization, usually by the origin and the people that help grow them up. And the first clash we have is when we try, as you said, to be a global village. When the company is needed to go outside of territories I always thought that the fact that I'm Western and I speak good English, that means that I can communicate and understand anybody. And then I found out, I opened the first offices or talked to the first big customers, and I understood that it's not true. I do not understand how to speak English, but communication and my behavior and my personalization still present me as an Israeli person, and there is a lot I can learn. So yes, organizations have egos and they are working it out through the evolution like any person. And I just wanted to add that any tips that you will get to a personal, if you think about the community and you think as an organization, as an organism, it's going through the same. It's just we never thought about it like that.
Yeah. Well, if I tie up both your comments and question, Lena. So what can we do about it? Well, the whole theme of, again, decentralization is, I think that's the direction of travel, right? We see it in politics, we see it breaking up, we see every major system breaking up. Economics is decentralized. I've played a part in decentralized finance, for example. That's just an analogy of the fact that the idea of autonomy, independence, authenticity, sovereignty is a theme throughout, okay? And it is reflected in the hologram that is the organization. So every leader is an individual. So there's going to be someone above them, right? Someone. So if we start with the individual that has some responsibility, because that's kind of a cheeky way to start, because they can influence things, is to I think to just act in the best way they can. So demonstrate through action how they can change the levels below them, right? By instilling much more autonomy, much more creativity, much more, I guess, decentralized decision making. And I'm not looking at, management by committee, because that also can be completely stifling, but truly being able to identify either, clusters of talent that may go away and find solutions to things, rather than, we've all got to come together and decide, and give people the decision to run with things, like just run with things. And you'll be surprised, 9 times out of 10 people do great things when they're given independence. But those very individuals also have a boss. Okay, so that comes to the second thing is, well, what happens if there's this difference between the fact that I really value this authenticity, this ability to kind of break away from this construct that I may feel I'm forced into. Well, I think that's really, if enough people were vocal, embracing, but not aggressive, but vocal, and said, look, okay, this is a two-way street. You've employed me to do a job. I want to excel. To excel, I need to do it the best way I know how, right? And guaranteed, if you give me that freedom, guaranteed, I'm sure I'm not going to let you down. There has to be an exchange of trust. And if you're struggling with that with a leader, right, then generally speaking, I have to say, probably the clock is ticking for how long that relationship is going to be successful, right? Because you're going to get to the point of so much frustration to say, well, I just can't work with this person because I'm not demonstrating my true value. So we all have to take responsibility for speaking our truth in any situation. And if we all did that just a little bit, dialed it up just a little bit, I mean, the impact would be phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I've seen it happen.
So I guess you agree with that Steve Jobs quote, I hired excellent people not to tell them what to do.
Exactly. And if, to quote someone who I admire hugely, is another tech leader called Michael Saylor. And Michael Saylor runs a company called MicroStrategy, not a great company, mid-tier tech company. I hope he never hears this.
I wanted to add something, and then you remind me it's going online, so I'm not going to say that.
But the one thing he's a genius for is he is also the biggest independent holder of Bitcoin in the world, right? Now, I would know that because of my world. However, he is, one of the things he said, and I know him from the industry, and I know people that have been tried to be hired by him or gone for interviews, and he was notoriously aggressive. I mean, honestly, people would last 5 minutes in an interview with this guy, it going back a couple of decades. But I heard him speak quite recently, within the last 18 months or so, and he said, I learned a very big lesson. My ego got in the way of hiring and keeping really good people. And I would sit around the boardroom every year, and I would look at the churn around the board. And that was a failure on me because I couldn't keep people. I've learned that. I've learned to actually trust and let go. Letting go is another major thing for everyone. And he's just an incredible success story. So yes, the best leaders do let go.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes a while to get there, right? To have this realization, to lose few good people. And I mean, the fact that you obviously realized it is incredible. But I just want to quickly reflect on what you said, you know, about communicating, saying this what works for me, this what doesn't work for me. So the way I almost like see it, the future work, communication is massive, is a crucial piece, and not just communicate superficially, like you do this, you do that, and not express like your emotions, or not even express, you know, your opinions, because we're taught to suppress them, to pretend everything is good, to run away, to ignore it. But that impacts our communication, right? So almost like allow ourselves to express what we feel, what works for us, what doesn't work, how can we do things better? And that comes with a crucial piece of self-awareness. And I think that's what you were alluding to.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other trick I have, which is, you know, pretty obvious, I guess, for most of us, but I'll say it anyway, is the one toolkit we all have is when we do voice something that we may not necessarily align with, come with a solution, come with an alternative, right? That way you're demonstrating the fact that not only do you want to do things potentially differently, but you have a reason for it and you have a solution for it. The last thing anyone needs is more problems, right? You know, and we've all been in a position where we've managed people, and you get people that get on with it, right? Never stick their head up, just get on with it. They worry me the most. You get those that always are knocking at your door, but it's generally kind of like on the couch scenario, and they generally just deliver problems. And then you get those that actually go, you know what, I'm going to find a way, I'll figure out a solution, and when I find a solution, I'll come and just get you to sanction it. And I hope more people can kind of learn from that, because again, if you tap into your creative realm, you will find many solutions, many.
I can share with you a personal experience through my theme of managing people, and I managed a lot, is that people, when you tell them to be authentic, usually can communicate what is wrong.
Yes.
And I usually used to tell them, if you don't have first something positive against the negative, so first to communicate to the organization that it needs to be balanced. And second of all, have a solution or a suggestion or an alternative, because bashing somebody else's idea or whatever, that's the easy part. But we didn't came out with this initiative because we want to do it, because we have a business reason and a need that should be addressed. So if you have any other solution or suggestion, that would be nice. And I can tell you that for me, that's exactly the point on authenticity, because a lot of people can be very, very critical or, you know, criticism about everything else. But the minute you ask somebody to look deep inside for a solution, so you may come to an understanding that what actually is on the table is a good thing, the situation, because you never know what tomorrow the situation or the information will bring. And also it helps people reflect.
Yeah.
And that's part of authenticity, that you cannot, in my opinion, I hope everybody will go to some kind of spiritual program, but that's currently not the situation. But we can, through communicating as you said, the simple basic of authenticity is not just shoot everything, because that's what I think. Be a little bit more reflective, more humble, check. And by asking people to come up with a solution, you actually get them to do that without telling them, in my opinion, to do that.
Yeah. And we are all a mirror of each other, right? And if we remember that, very hard. I mean, once it clicks, you kind of go, oh, yeah, okay, I can see that. But we are all a mirror. And if you are projecting that, first of all, you've got to ask yourself, why is all this negativity coming out of me? So there's some work to be done there. but also the consequence of projecting that. You've got to think of the consequence of projecting that. So, again, taking control, having that power, having that autonomy means many things, right? It means also taking responsibility. And to Lena's point about what can we do? Well, your career, your life path, your life force is being expressed every day through work. We only hear, depending on your view, for so many years, right? We should be living our most authentic life, and work is an expression of that authenticity. And all of these things converge together. And it all comes down to, again, no one out there really, we've got to kind of move from this, okay, I'll take my orders, right? No, you take control of who you are and foster your life path through your work, through autonomy, the ability to speak, independence. And if everyone did that, the natural design of businesses would have to move away from this top down.
Very inspiring words, Nicole. So happy we had this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's what.
Sorry, Lena, go for it.
That's what the future work should look like, right? To approach every single day, every single decision that you make, every action that you take with that level of intention and awareness. Yeah, so it was beautifully answered. Thank you for that.
So Nicole, before we would close this conversation today, anything else you would like to tell anybody? This is your chance.
Okay. Oh gosh. Well, all right. Obviously, I'm not going to kill the audience with an example from my peculiarity of my industry, but I do think, Sarit and Lena, we spoke the other day regarding the future work and technology, and we all have had careers in technology or continue to do, and one of the topics was AI. Right now, this is probably another podcast. I appreciate that.
You're getting me fired up right now.
I know. It's not a way to kind of calm things down and end a conversation, but I did give that some thought. And, again, I'm passionate about technology. And for me, I've always seen technology through a positive lens. It's always been an enabler. And so the message I want to leave with people is, whatever the technology, and technology can be defined by, we are technology, right? It can be used for good or for bad. We can be used for good or for bad. But I did do some homework, and you asked me about potentially some recommendation I could put forward for a book or some learnings. Well, actually, it's not a book. It's an interview. It's a video interview with an ex-Google officer. His name is Mo Gawdat, spelled Gawdat. I'm sure you can put the link in below. And he really was responsible for the AI strategy within Google. And he wrote a book called Scary Smart. I really think it's appropriate for people to look at that and actually draw conclusions from the potential of technology for good or for bad, but specifically the topic of AI, because I think that's incredibly relevant, and I know a deep concern, passion, interest area for you, Sarit. So yes,
I read the book. I know what you're talking about.
Oh, brilliant. So... Okay, brilliant. So yeah, that was the only thing I wanted to mention.
Awesome. Good. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and for just being such a wonderful guest and sharing all your wisdom. It was some great golden nuggets, I think, for people to take away in terms of what success means, how we can really, stop holding ourselves back from achieving our full potentials.
And thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you, Nicole. And thank you for helping our cause.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll see you in Tel Aviv soon, I hope.
Yeah, come over.
Great. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.